This video is brought to you by Summer Associate Hub.
Today, we're going to learn all about human design, how it helped me, and just how it might help you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Break into Law School. I am your host, LoVetta Jenkins. Today, we are talking to Jacques Anderson. She's the founder and CEO of Lean Into Your Design, which is a human design centered coaching and consulting business dedicated to unlocking the full potential of individuals and teams. Hello, Jacques.
Hello. So nice to be here.
Great to have you. Now, we got to do a little bit of talking. First of all, before we get into all about human design and how it can help everybody, give us a little bit of a background on yourself. How did you get into law and then move forward from there?
Yep. So to be honest, I got into law because I was raised in a working class family. And honestly, when I was younger, there were like 3 or 4 professions that you could do. It was like you could be a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, or some sort of government employee, post office worker, bus driver. I don't like blood. Don't want to teach. And so honestly, being a lawyer was like the first career that fit, and it was a defined path for me to essentially just escape the hood. Like not even gonna make like up some like interesting story about it. And so when I was younger in high school, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a lawyer. This makes sense. I went to college, I did the pre-law thing. I went straight from undergrad to law school because the good thing about being a lawyer in some ways is that it's a very well defined path, for better or for worse. And I just kind of did as much research as I could and just shot forward and, went straight from undergrad to law school. And then from law school, I started being a corporate attorney.
Ooh, ooh. And you know what? When you said that about the clear defined professions when we were younger, I think we used to call them community helpers when I was teaching. That would be the areas that they would set out. And it was always lawyer, doctor, and then you would get the government employees like the mail carrier, sanitation workers, things like that. That was all that we were ever really kind of shown. So to know that you picked one, which was the right one for you, and ran with it, that's really good. So how long were you working in law day to day?
So I was working in law day to day for about 7 years. I started my career at a firm called Skadden in New York, and I did mergers and acquisitions as an associate for about 4 years. And then I transitioned to my first startup and worked there for 3 years. And I was the head of business development and legal affairs because they had like a combined kind of hybrid role, which was really cool. And then in that role, I did like 60% legal work and about 40% like more business corporate work.
And through all of that, you landed on something called human design, which I think is one of the coolest titles I've ever heard. What exactly is, if you can explain it, what exactly is human design for those who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so human design is honestly a tool. It's a practice. I always encourage people to think about what is in their toolkit to like help them just stay grounded, understand themselves. And it could be things like yoga, meditation, etc. But human design is based on your birth information, and it essentially creates a report or like I call it a blueprint of how you best make decisions, how you use your energy, like how you're designed at a very high level. It can pinpoint some of your superpowers, but it can also pinpoint some areas of possible conditioning. And I think a lot of us are trying to like unlearn certain things. So, as much as it's like a mirror to give you the vocabulary of how you're uniquely designed and some of your quirks and like superpowers, it can also identify areas of potential conditioning that you might have inherited from your family or friends or just society.
Mm. So before we started recording the podcast today, you were able to do a little bit of human design with me, and I gave you all my numbers and all my kind of stuff, and I was surprised to find out that I'm exactly who I said I was. And it's all because of human design and the way I was put together. So there are different types of people, and I happen to be a generator. What are the other types, and can you explain those for us?
Yes, that's a great question. So there are 5 different types. And I'll like explain them in a way in like a story so people can understand like how they fit. Because in its essence, human design tries to identify how each person, regardless of like what their birthday is, has a role in society. And how they manifest that role can differ, but like at their core, they have like a certain thing that they're put on this earth to do. And so the five types are first is not first, but the first one I'll hit is manifestors. Manifestors are about 9% of the population, and they're people who are here to get things started. They're here to initiate. So they have the idea. A good example is Adele. Adele is a manifestor. So if she's like sitting at home and has an idea to do like a different type of album or a different type of tour, she's the one that has these transformative, forward-looking ideas. Now the catch is manifestors, for all their glory and their good ideas, often are unable to do the work themselves, by themselves, I should say. Manifestors often need like a team of people to help them kind of complete their vision, complete the work. And so they kind of announce what they're up to because the idea is that they get allies to help them complete the work in a society. And when they announce it, people like yourself, like generators, they kind of see that and they're like, okay, that makes me feel good. I want to like further this idea and help. Because generators are people who are here to like build and create. Now, a lot of people who are generators, like your Oprahs, your Beyoncés, they are very creative, but some people are more of like a builder. They like build companies, they build teams, they build families. They just have the energy to create something in the most like fundamental sense of the word. And then there's a hybrid that's between a manifestor and a generator. These are people who can initiate like a manifestor and then do the work and like create like a generator. They have a huge engine. And these are individuals who often have like a very like multi-passionate, unorthodox life path. So the friend who's like the lawyer who became a chef, who became like a photographer, they're likely a manifesting generator. And they're just supposed to have that path because, it all makes sense really in hindsight. The third type is a projector. I'm a projector. Many lawyers are projectors because the projector's job, so to speak, is to guide. Like projectors are prized less so for like what they do, although they can do and work and do all those things too, but it's in what they see. So projectors are really good at like seeing into systems, seeing into people, like understanding what's the most efficient way to complete this task. That's why so many lawyers are projectors, because they kind of see how to like advise a person, how to help get the deal done, what this case needs to be successful. But the crux for projectors is that, a lot of times we have inconsistent energy. So as an attorney, when I'm in a firm and I'm trying to work like all these billable hours, sometimes I have it and sometimes I don't, which is common for a projector. But we don't know that about ourselves. So a lot of times projectors get burnt out because they're trying to compete and have all this energy, which they often don't have all the time. And then the last type is called a reflector. Reflectors are the most rare. They're about 1% of the population, and they're supposed to sit in the middle of society and essentially sample what's going on because they have a completely like open kind of, it's called a body graph, but all of their like centers of how they receive energy is open. They don't have like a lot of defined energy. So they pick up from their environment a lot of information, like how people feel, what people are like fearing, how their emotions are. And they're really like the canary in the coal mine on whether or not whatever society or an environment they're in is actually healthy or not. If they're living in their truth, they're some of the most wise people because they're sampling all the energies all the time. So they really, really know more so than anyone, like what's actually happening to the collective.
All of those really make sense when you think about how we would need to work in a village type society together. How can human design really benefit lawyers, current lawyers or upcoming lawyers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first piece of it is just simple awareness. When I was going through, I mentioned a very well defined path. It's easy to just get caught up in that, and you don't take a chance to take a step back and think through, like, who am I, like, internally, outside of being a lawyer, outside of going to this law school, like, what makes me happy, what am I actually really good at, and like how can I best use my energy. So I think from an awareness standpoint, it creates a mirror for someone to have very deep self-reflection, either before they go become a lawyer or while they're in the process of becoming one. It's just helpful. I think second, once you have an awareness of what you're like naturally good at in some areas that you might need to improve, you can leverage that. So for instance, if I would have known that I'm a projector and I get, my best insights from seeing and like that's how I should be rewarded, I might have spoke up more at the firm. I could have tried to position myself in circumstances where it's better suited for my gifts. versus a lot of people try to become generators and like have all this energy, and that's just really not my bag. I could have just kind of worked in a much more smarter way, because the idea isn't that you try to become something you're not. It's just leaning into the gifts that you already have. Like, how can I be better suited at what I'm already doing, just being smarter about it and making like small tweaks to like how I approach the work.
hmm I think that had I known 20 years ago that I was a generator and these attributes were in me, and not just, and I would not have fought against what I felt internally. I knew that there were some things I was supposed to be doing. Even now, there are some things that you're supposed to be doing, but you're thinking maybe I shouldn't do those, or maybe I shouldn't do this. But going with the intuition that's already built in, if I would have had these tools years ago, I think I'd probably be a little bit farther. But as we say, all things come in their own time. I think that right now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, learning exactly what I need to learn. And from this day forward, I'm going to be doing something different. So tell us more about how you can better align human design with, everyday tasks, with dealing with who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I think what you just said is great, because at its core, human design basically gives you tools to live life in more flow, less friction. Because to your point, it's like if I had known these things, it's not like my life would have changed. I just would have experienced a lot less kind of friction in like my day to day life. And so, in terms of your daily life, it's like it gives you the help you need to just on a daily basis just make decisions that are aligned with you. And often, unfortunately, we don't always have that license. Growing up, especially in the years that we did, our parents weren't saying listen to your body to make decisions, or listen to your intuition to make decisions. It was like be smart, listen to your mind, find the facts. And I'm not discounting that at all. But what I'm saying is, it's like we were kind of working with only half of the information of what we need individually to make the best decisions for us. And so, on an everyday level, it really helps me because, for example, I mentioned I'm a projector. One of the things that projectors really struggle with is when to take rest. We are very apt to burn out. And that's because, we're so used to using our minds, and we want to have the energy like a generator, but it's hard for us to have that consistent output. But of course, we want to do a good job. So you just kind of like run past your limits, and now you're facing burnout. Now you're facing fatigue. Once I understood that as a projector, despite my best efforts, I'm just going to have days where I don't have it, where I need to rest. It gave me kind of the license I needed to take that rest when it wasn't safe, or not safe, when it wasn't comfortable. When you're on a Saturday afternoon and you have nothing to do, it's easy to rest. But when it's like Thursday evening, you got a big Friday call. I'm like, I struggle with it. It's the conditioning in me. It's like, do more, do more. But like, what does it look like if I actually took my own advice, got the rest I needed, and then I can approach whatever work I have much more capable? Because projectors, when rested, they can do a lot more work in like a short period of time than like most people. But if you're not rested, you kind of like you're only like working with like half a tank.
And it's interesting that you said most lawyers are projectors, because I find that most lawyers are the ones who are going to experience burnout, as opposed to, the mail carrier and, the other public servants that we talked about in the beginning. How can learning your human design, and especially finding out you're a projector, work when you're talking about study habits? Because I think that that's where a lot of the, law students are finding a lot of burnout. How can that help them in the beginning before they get to be a lawyer?
I think that's a great question. I think first is understanding what you need to have a supportive environment and what you need individually to do your best work. So for me as a projector, like most projectors do really well if they can have like 4 hours of like very intense focus time. And if I'm a law student, that could mean I can, carve out 3 to 4 hours to read, to do my like readings for the week, to, apply for jobs. And then the rest of that time is spent like kind of cultivating what you already know, like going into your curiosities, learning about different areas of law that might be of interest to you, and just organizing your day so that you are doing the things that fundamentally support you as a person versus doing what everybody else is doing. Because in law school, there's a lot of, I need to do this because everybody else is doing that. But not everyone is set up to behave like what the norm is. A good example are manifestors, which we haven't talked about. Manifestors kind of operate in creative bursts. And it's like they have a burst of energy and they get these creativity hits and they got to be creative and they kind of like have a lull. And often we're taught that you need to be consistently creative or consistently good every day. And you kind of beat yourself up if on the day you have your lull, you're like, why am I not creative today? But what would it look like if I'm a law student? If I'm like, okay, when I have my creative burst, I will carve out time to like honor it and do the thing. And when I don't have that creative burst, I will use that time to just work on me, to rest, to do other things versus trying to force it. Because when you force things, that's when you start having that friction that we kind of talked about. You're like forcing yourself to be something in a way that you're not. It's almost like an inauthenticity on accident.
I'm finding such good like gems in all of this because I can see now how this could really help somebody who's in the beginning stages of getting ready to learn something new, or in, you know, in my case I was older but going into a new part of my career life. And we talked briefly before we began recording about how me being a generator, we deal with our life in thirds. And the first few years, the first part of my adulthood, it was really, it was out there. And then once I got to a certain age, I really stopped, paused, looked at everything that I had laid out in front of me, and really took stock of everything I had done and put them in their right compartments. So that way I can move forward from here, doing better and learning more and saying, okay, I did that. Don't y'all do that. It's better to just do it this way. So, learning all of those things really did help me. And hopefully, this is going to help somebody else. Now, if you know, and we all know that there's somebody who's listening to this or somebody in the audience that is really thinking, hey, I might need to know something about that, but I was taught not to be digging into this kind of stuff. Tell me a little bit about why human design isn't what we think it is, or what people traditionally think of, you know, as zodiacs and things of that nature, and how it's better helpful.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with first like what it's a combination of. So it's a combination of like the chakra system, astrology, I Ching, which is like a 2 millennia old Chinese spiritual practice, and the Kabbalah. So it kind of puts together these things that have been around for like millennia that people have been leveraging. And I think I encourage people, to view it less of like a tarot or astrology or kind of woo woo, where it's just maybe informative, and honestly see it as something that's a personal blueprint for the person, right? It's a helpful tool. It gives you so much information that sometimes it's actually overwhelming, and to just be curious about it. And if someone is like, oh, I can't touch that, I would ask them to ask themselves why. Who told you you couldn't? Who told you? Because a lot of times it's like, even if it's yoga or it's meditation, people have this, it's not for me. And for some people it may not be. I think everything should be an experiment. If it doesn't serve you, you should let it go. But if you have an aversion to something and you haven't had the curiosity to even try it out or be open to it, I think that's the invitation to really ask yourself, why is that? Like, who told me, or what societal pressures told me that wasn't for me? And especially in Black communities, a lot of things that aren't rooted in church or rooted in some sort of like old known fact become suspicious. And I think that, thankfully, we're entering a time where a lot more of us are curious. We want to understand our own values, we want to understand our own traits, and this is just one tool of many that's able to kind of like hold up a mirror, and it can read you to filth in a good way. It can, in a good way, but like also in a way to just point out some of these areas that may even be blind spots. So I encourage everyone to at least know the basic information, and if it speaks to you, you can go deeper and learn more about it, but at least kind of have the foundational knowledge to see, is this something that can really help me in my everyday life?
Mm. So, for somebody out there who would like to know more about human design and how we can apply it to regular life, how could they possibly get in touch with you to find out more?
Yes, yes. So I mean, I have a website. It's my first name, Jacques Anderson, last name.com. I also have an Instagram, which, if people want to get a flavor for who I am, it's Lean Into Your Design, on Instagram and TikTok. And I put Lean Into Your Design because I want people to lean into it and just see if it's for them. You can lean into certain pieces, you can, not lean in others. But the idea is that you leverage this information in a way that speaks to you. I'm also at hello at jacquesanderson.com. And if someone's super curious about human design, my advice would be first get your birth information if that's possible. You'll need your birth time, you'll need your birthday, which you should have, and the city of your birth. And then you can get a free what's called human design body graph anywhere online. Just honestly, human design body graph or human design chart on Google. I have a free version on my site, but you don't have to even go there. You can go anywhere on Google and like kind of get the basic information. And then once you have that basic information, depending on like what website you use, you might need to do a little bit more investigation to understand what the different pieces mean. Some people may just give you the results and they don't give you any kind of description because they want you to like, I don't know, like go to them to get the description. Don't do that. I tell everybody, don't do that. If you go somewhere and they just tell you like you're a generator with nothing else, just look up generator human design. It's tons of information freely available, and that's something I really like about human design is that a lot of the information is free. You can go to someone like me that's a coach, so you can like have one-to-one help on how you can integrate it on your life based on your experiences, and it's all personalized. But if you just want to be curious, it's free 99 online. You just Google it, find your chart, and then like human design projector, human design profile, and it'll give you at least a flavor of what these things mean. And if you're confused, you can always reach out to me, and I'm like happy to help.
Oh, I love the fact that you said that there are things that are free 99 out there because we here at Break Into Law School love the free and we love to make sure people get free information. So I thank you from me and our listeners for telling us all what we can find out more. Jacques, you have been an absolute pleasure to talk to today. And I am quite sure that this is not going to be the last time we have a conversation. Anything you want to say to our listeners and viewers before I let you go?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you know, if you're in law school, I know what it's like. You're just trying to get ahead, you're trying to make a good impression on your professors and your potential jobs and so forth. But I would just encourage you to start thinking about who you are as a person outside of being a lawyer or working at a specific firm, company, whatever, and get in touch with that first. Because if you have a solid grounding on who you are, you can just be a better employee. You can be a much better student. It doesn't eliminate, but it mitigates some of the kind of inherent rat race and comparison game that's in the legal profession and many professions. If you know, like, I'm a person who like stands for X, Y, and Z, and I'm designed to do these things, you have more of a solid foundation. You may not get caught up as much in the comparison game of like trying to be good enough. If you're more solid on who you are, that won't affect you as much. I won't say it's a complete because I know it's hard, but it's at least a little tidbit of like what I wish I'd known. Like, Jacques, you're good at these things. So this is your not your lane, but where you should look, where you should put your efforts. And if you're not like working 20 hours a day and loving it, like that's fine because you are really designed to do that. So just asking yourself these questions can be very, very helpful as you get into these institutions, these firms, these environments that really try to make you one thing.
What great conversation we have had today. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Jacques. I have appreciated every single second of this. Thank you.